We will be in Leviticus chapter 5 tonight, if you want to start turning over there. Leviticus chapter 5. I had a rabbit trail I chased today, and I won't make y'all run as far down the path with me as I ran. But I had a question that was asked about women in sacrifices. So let me run that path quickly with you. So with the sin offering is, I'm going to give the rule and then we'll try to answer the question. The sin offering is for everyone. So what about the women? I'm going to tell you the quick, I'll give you the quick overview answer and then I can answer any questions that I know the answer to. We don't know. Okay? Here's what we do know. Do y'all remember during Jesus' time period, first of all in Leviticus we're during the tabernacle time, then there was the temple. Well, by Jesus' time we've had the temple destroyed and rebuilt, and we call it Herod's temple. Okay, how was Herod's temple set up? What were the main sections of Herod's temple? What's the innermost part called? Holy of Holies. Then? Holies. And then? Everybody else. Okay, that's what one might think, but it's not true. But good idea. Anybody know what else is next? The next place is called the courtyard of men. Then outside of that is the courtyard of women and Gentiles. So this is where we really reach a conundrum with this question. I can almost give you a pretty close to positive answer according to all my study, but not according to any facts, because I haven't found any historians from that time period. Closest historian I can find is 600 AD, which is way after. During the time period of the courtyard of Gentiles and women could not get into where, let me see if I've got a slide or two of flower. Oh, let me go back. All right, this one. I'm using this one because my research showed that a lot of times women offered birds. The women could not get into the altar to offer their sacrifice. They couldn't do it because they're way out at the courtyard of Gentiles. And so by the time period of Jesus, they were not able to make their way to the regular courtyard where sacrifices could be offered. How were sacrifices offered, especially, with the ones we've been discussing in chapters 1 through 5 of Leviticus? Who did the butchering of the animal? The person that brought the offering. So if the altar is way back, there's one altar, and there's more than one altar, depending on the sacrifice. But if the altar is at least in the courtyard of men, and they're a woman, how could they butcher the animal? So here's what we believe happened during that time period. The woman would bring her offering, and the priest would take it the rest of the way and do the butchering of it. So she still could offer a sacrifice, but she could not sacrifice the animal. She could not kill the animal. Now, that's as close to facts as I know. Now, here's suppositions, okay? And that's where most of our time is spent, is in guesses with this question. With ladies, there's a story, a very, very, very uncanonical story called The Chosen. Maybe y'all have heard of it. The Chosen makes up their own stories on their TV show. In The Chosen, they have this story where there's two women that are talking about offering a sacrifice, and there's a discussion of you can't offer sacrifices. And maybe you've seen that one. Okay. And what do the women wind up doing? Do you remember? The guy that's flirting with them gives them a bird. So they do offer a sacrifice, but the discussion was you're not supposed to offer sacrifices. So what that is implying, and what a lot of people believe, is women were not required to offer sacrifices. They could choose to offer the sacrifice. but there was not the requirement that was on the men. Now, a forgiveness of sins, a whole burnt offering and sin offerings were offered twice daily. And so there would be those that would be offered for everyone. And then you also have the option, and my mind went this way as soon as I started the study. My idea was that if she had a husband, maybe he did the offering for her. G?
Well, the man had to take the life of something that was not guilty.
Yep.
They had to do the killing of the animal.
Correct.
So if the women did that, then even with a bird or something, looks like they still would have had to have been the one that sacrificed, take the life
Yes.
of something innocent.
Yes. G said for the proper way that the Levitical way that's set up for a sacrifice to happen is you had to be the one to take the innocent thing's life to cover your sin. And so if there's not a way to do that, at least by the time period of Jesus, there's some things not happening exactly according to the law. Now, here's the question, though, and I don't think I have a picture in this slideshow, but I have one in the next slideshow if we get to it today. The synagogue was not, the tabernacle was not set up like that temple that we find in Jesus' time. When you read the rules of the tabernacle, you were very close. Everyone was very close to where the sacrifices were happening. So maybe originally women could do some of these things that by the time of Jesus they could not. The correct answer is we don't know. We do know women offered sacrifices, but we only have one commanded sacrifice that we're going to get to in a few chapters, and that was where she offered the sacrifice after giving birth. That's a good question. So I dug around in some Jewish women's Bible studies, and they teach that they believe that the Levites' wives cooked the bread from the sacrifices when it was not the bread that was called the holy bread. Remember how we talked about some bread was holy bread and it couldn't leave the tabernacle, but some bread the priest got to take home with him? The bread that the priest got to take home with him, they believe the women cooked. The bread that the priest couldn't take home with him, they believe he cooked. But that's a guess. And they also believe that the women, the Levites' wives, or women in general, were the ones that made the garments for the Levites. Because when the the tabernacle was being built, some of the curtains were made by women. So they were allowed to make the curtains. Good question. So here's the reason I bring up the birthing sacrifice that we're going to hit in a few chapters. The birthing sacrifice that a woman would offer after giving birth was a whole burnt offering and a sin offering. And women had to offer that. So at the very least on that sacrifice, women were offering sin offerings and whole burnt offerings. The how, that's what we can never, I don't know that we'll ever know, to tell the truth. And I read a Stack's library of ancient Jewish sources, and none of them seem to have an answer. Good questions. If y'all ever, not just for fun, but if you ever want to stump the preacher, that was one of those kind of questions. Now we are going to be talking about the guilt offerings. So let's move on to the guilt offerings. Leviticus chapter 5. The final two paragraphs of chapter 5 change subjects and introduce the guilt offerings. But I want you to notice the verse 14. The Lord spoke to Moses saying, remember I told you, whenever you see this phrase, it means he's changing subjects. Moses does this over and over, where he'll say, the Lord spoke to Moses saying, and we're now in a new subject. Guilt offering is a translation of the Hebrew word asham, and it means guilt or offense or trespass. Many translations render this term guilt offering. New American Standard, NRSV, NIV, NAB, ESV. King James and New King James translate this as trespass offering. And REB calls it a reparation offering. NJB calls it a sacrifice of reparation. And CEV has a sacrifice to make things right. I think all three of those last translations weren't translating. They were giving you what they were commentating. Instead of giving you a translation is it's a guilt offering or offense offering or trespass offering. But a comment on that is, the purpose in it is, it was to make restoration or restitution. It was an offering to where you could make things right with another human or God. The other offerings, sin and whole burnt offering, dealt with sin, but this is a different type of sin. This is a sin that you can actually do something about. Can you think of some sins today that we can do nothing about? No matter how much we want to, we can't take it back or change it. What's a sin like that? Maybe I told lots of horrible rumors about Vern, and everybody believed me. He lost his job, and now he's dead. Sorry. Well, other than maybe helping out his widow, there's not much I can do about it, right? So I can't go back and make a restitution to him. But I can make things right with God, right? These are ones that there's still another party that you can work things out with. It reminds me of that, and I never did research into this, and I wonder if this is what Jesus was referencing, though. You remember when he makes references to, like, if your brother has something against you, go solve it quickly. Some of that talks about court and things like that, but this is what you're doing. You're solving something with someone. So you're not just offering a sacrifice to God, you're also paying back something you owe. Now, can you think of a sin today that we could make restitution for?
I won't say bad about some individuals.
Yep.
Gossip about someone.
Yeah, and so how could you make restitution for that?
Go to them and apologize.
Go to them and apologize, yeah. That would be a way to make restitution. Maybe even make a statement to others. I wasn't telling the truth. I should not have said this. They are. Okay? Harley, what's something else?
I was thinking, not for me or a time, but I've often made the statement, and I've had others say it to me as well. After I retired, if it wasn't for church, Sunday and Wednesday, I'd lose track of time. It's just possible that once in a while, the Jewish people may have lost track of time, and they may have got up on Saturday morning and worked.
Yeah.
They realized it was Saturday.
Yeah.
They had the guilt offering.
Yeah. That's true. All of the sin offering, when we talked about it, was called an offering for unintentional sins. That would be an unintentional sin there. Vern, when we were having our men's study the other day, I remember someone saying something about, would you turn me into the police? A restitution, then the example I gave was there was a guy that was watching the movie The Passion of Christ. And then he went to the nearest church and talked to him, told him about him committing murder. And they said, here's what you need to do to be saved, but you also have to call the police and turn yourself in. Restitution, you can do a form of restitution by taking the punishment of your murder while also being forgiven of God. So there are sins that even today we can do restitution for, and we also need to go to God. It's two parts, just as it was then. These offerings were necessary to be forgiven of sins, against the Lord's holy things or breaking His commandments, and they were required for forgiveness of sins involving taking another's property. So in chapter 5, he's going to cover restitutions we can make back to God. In chapter 6, he's going to talk about restitutions we can make back to our fellow man. They were for the forgiveness of sins. So there's two types of guilt offerings. The first one is we are making restitution because we did something with God's holy things that we should not have, unintentionally. As Harley pointed out, there's a big difference. What's the okay? We're not there yet. But anybody know about the high priest's two sons that committed a sin by bringing fire that they should not have? They weren't given a chance to make restitution. Why? Because it was intentional. Unintentional versus intentional. Breaking the Lord's commands. The second is what we do to another human that we need to make restitution for. All right, let's look at that first section. Sins against God's holy things, verses 15 and 16. If anyone commits a breach of faith and sins unintentionally in any of the holy things of the Lord, he shall bring to the Lord as his compensation a ram without blemish out of the flock, valued in silver shekels, according to the shekel of the sanctuary, for a guilt offering. He shall also make restitution for what he has done amiss in the holy thing, and shall add a fifth to it and give it to the priest. And the priest shall make atonement for him with the ram of the guilt offering, and he shall be forgiven. All right. So there's actually two things being covered here that we could do against God. They could do against God. What was the first thing they could have done against God? That they need to make restitution to Him for. Doing something unintentionally against the holy things. Actually, I guess it's just one thing here, but the second part is, okay, we'll get to the second part in a minute, I guess. But the first thing there is they did something against the holy things, and they have to pay back a fifth part of it. So it was something that they did that was not intentional, something that they did that could be compensated for. So, honestly, this could cover a lot of things. You forget to make a sacrifice you should make. You promised, you made a vow, and you said, I'm going to do this and this for God, and you don't do it. Anything that is God's thing that you don't do for God, now you not only owe that thing to God, you owe 20% more. That's your restitution. So, I missed out on the Passover or whatever it might be. I did not do it intentionally, as Harley brought up. Old timers. No. I didn't do it intentionally. So now I'm going to pay that back to God, what I would have offered, plus 20%. How can you pay back 20% of an animal? Chop off another leg of another one? What did he tell you? In silver. So you're paying this back to God. The whole thing, the whole 120% could be in silver, or an animal plus silver to pay back what you owe to God. And then you make a guilt offering of the ram, and he shall be forgiven. Now, here's the second thing we can do against God. I didn't read that part yet. That's why you didn't know it. Other sins. If anyone sins doing any of the things by the Lord's commands ought not to be done, though he did not know it, then he realizes his guilt, he shall bear his iniquity. He shall bring to the priest a ram without blemish of the offering of the flock, out of the flock, or its equivalent for a guilt offering, and the priest shall make atonement for him for the mistake he has made unintentionally, and he shall be forgiven. It is a guilt offering. He has incurred guilt before the Lord. All right, so what are these type of sins? Well, I'm going to read you a little quote here. The priest, no details as to how the guilt offering was to be sacrificed is told in the passage. What is told is what the sacrifice is to be. What is the sacrifice to be? A ram.
You said or equivalent.
Yeah, or it's equivalent. So I guess you could also pay in the silver for the ram like that one too. Now, let me read you some examples. An Israelite could sin against God's holy things in several ways. He might forget to bring his first fruits of harvest. He might forget to bring a sacrifice. He could inadvertently eat some of the food designated for the priest. Now that's what my mind went to when he talked about taking the holy things. Something that was not supposed to be your part, and you ate it. He might vow to give something to the Lord, such as the house or a piece of property, then neglect to do so. All right. This is another one of those where I think he's a little bit ambiguous and maybe intentionally so. Maybe God left it open so that you could think to yourself, what I did I shouldn't have done, okay, that could fall under this. Maybe he intentionally left it up to the mind. What do y'all think? It is. Yeah. Maybe it's just when you start feeling guilty. The guilt offering is time. Yeah, exactly. Because 20% isn't going to do anything for God. It's for your... That's right. I'm going to repeat what Chance said. I think it's... He said I, but now I'm going to say I too. I think it's mostly for the person's sake, so that they can move on. I think a lot of our guilt as Christians today is the same way. God has already forgiven our guilts, and yet we hold on to them, and He wants us to move on. And we offer prayers over and over and over for a sin that may have been forgiven long ago. Or maybe y'all aren't that way.
But on that point, like Paul said, it's ever before him.
Yep.
So he remembers that. He doesn't forget it. It's there, and he realized, which helps him apparently not to do it again.
G was saying that Paul says that it's ever before him, and by having that in your mind, maybe it will help you not repeat your same sins. All right, now we're going to get into the one that's a little bit easier to define, and that is when you've done something to someone else that you can pay back. Verses 1 through 7. The Lord, Yahweh, spoke to Moses, saying, if anyone commits a breach of faith against the Lord by deceiving his neighbor in a matter of deposit or security, and every time there's a comma, there's going to be a new one, so let's just stop there. What's the first thing that you could have done against your neighbor? Stole something. Actually, all of these are going to be stole something. It's just which type of stole something. So what's the first type of stole something? You held a deposit. So the idea of trusting banks is a very new concept. Most of time, people never trusted someone else to hold their money. So they found someone that they cared about, and they trusted them. Vern trusted me to watch over his house when he was gone. We still do that a little bit today. But back then, it was common with a lot of things. Your cloak, your staff, anything that was valuable to you, you might put in a friend's care when you're going away. The Bible has lots of rules of what to do if it goes missing, but here we're told this person did not return the deposit. So it wasn't just that something happened, it was they stole something. All right, the next one. Or through robbery. Okay, that's pretty obvious. The next one. Or if he has oppressed his neighbor. Now, we're talking about financial, so what could that be? How could you financially oppress your neighbor? Overcharge them for something. Yeah, that's one.
NIV uses cheats.
Cheats your neighbor. That'd fall right in line. Using two sets of weights and balances, people often did. I'm going to weigh your grain with this scale, and then I'll pay you with this scale. And they were two different amounts of weight. Or has found something lost and lied about it. So you found something that your neighbor lost, and not only did you not tell them that you found what they had lost, you lied to them. Oh, that bull you're missing, I don't know where it is. It's in my field. Or if he has sinned, swearing falsely in any and all the things that people do and sin thereby. So, swearing falsely to make money, telling a false, maybe in court or in some other way, telling a false swear so that you can make sure that you benefit by it, or even just in a normal promise. If you do this job for me, I will pay you this much. And you swear to the person, and then you pay them a different amount. Any type of swearing falsely that people might do. If he has sinned and has realized his guilt and will restore what he took by robbery, or what he got by oppression, or the deposit that was committed to him, or the lost thing that he found, or anything by which he has sworn falsely, he shall restore it in full, and shall add a fifth to it, and give it to him to whom it belongs on the day he realizes his guilt. The day that you realize you made a mistake, you're not supposed to go to bed till you go make it right. Now, I tell you, that would be a lot easier for us as Christians than what we typically do. When we realize that we got a fault, we fret and we think about it and we think, well, what about this or maybe this, or and then we go talk to other people. You all think I was in the right? And we spend weeks and months and maybe years trying to decide if we're going to ever repent of the fault, when it would be a lot easier if we just that day go handle it. Don't let the sun go down on it. He shall bring it to the priest as his compensation to the priest, to the Lord, a ram without blemish out of the flock, or its equivalent for the guilt offering. So he has to give the gift to God, and he has to give back the 120% to his fellow man. And the priest shall make atonement for him before the Lord, and he shall be forgiven for any of the things that one may do, and thereby become guilty. This is a very wicked topic that we're talking about, but isn't it great, that last phrase? That if you do what I told you to do, you'll be forgiven of any of it. I mean, these are some bad things that they could have done. Jim?
I don't know if I'm missing something. Maybe I am. You can show me if I am. It seems like all of these various compensations are physical. There's no emotional involvement. You just, I got caught. I've got it. Or,
Yep.
Whereas today, as a Christian,
Uh-huh.
I would feel bad doing something like this to someone else.
Uh-huh.
It has nothing to do with feelings here. It's just, you did it, you got paid for it. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Yeah, that's the way it appears. You know, the way it's written.
Do y'all feel like there was any emotional involvement of the person that's having to go?
There's a great example over in Luke, and that's Zacchaeus.
Yeah.
Because he restored fourfold.
Yeah.
Which showed the deep-seated heart of repentance when he did that.
That's true. Zacchaeus, because of the emotion involved, gave back more than the 120%. He restored fourfold.
It always has seemed to me that that's one of the basic difference between Old Testament life, New Testament life. The New Testament life, God was all about love. And everything we do should be exalted.
Yeah.
In everything we do.
Yeah.
Back then, it was more, the law was so strict, because that's what you follow, is that law.
Yeah.
It was more important than what you
Yeah.
heart.
It could be very easy to even at this point go, I'm going to give you 120%, but not 121%. But I struggle with seeing there's no emotion in it because of the word guilt. And it says, if he feels, how is that phrase? If he has sinned and realizes his guilt. To me, guilt is an emotion. But I could be wrong. It feels
The way I
emotion.
look at it, people 3,000 years ago have to be basically just like us, emotion-wise and things like that. So
Yeah.
I would think that the same emotion we go through now, they went through then.
Yeah.
There might be differences in some part, I mean, life is a whole lot harder back then. So.
Yeah. Good questions and discussion. How could such sins be forgiven? Always, every time, they had to have no defect. 120% and no defect. So you paid back more, but it was also about there always has to be, and this is what G brought up when we were talking about women sacrifices earlier, there's always got to be something of, I'm taking an innocent life because of the sin I committed. That's in every one of these. There's something that's completely without defect, but because of my defect, it had to give its life. Which reminds me of Genesis chapter 3, end of 3, beginning of 4, if I remember right. What happened at the end of the garden? Adam and Eve sinned, and they were cast out of the garden. What happens there at the end? God killed animals. They sinned, and they try to cover up their nakedness, and they cannot cover up their guilt by themselves, and so God kills animals to cover up their guilt.
I was recalling one of your previous lessons. It wasn't just a matter of having a sacrifice, like in this case, a ram without defect. I had to have some personal feelings for that ram.
That's exactly right. So it's not only that the animal was without defect, it also was an animal that was emotionally important to you. Either like with the, for example, Day of Atonement, we're going to get to later, they spent a whole week around them. They spent time around this animal. It was close to their family.
We're just about 5 chapters in.
Yep.
The old law was a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine trying to keep all the rules and all the sacrifices?
No.
You know, I mean, we're so fortunate today. I mean, you could spend your life trying to do everything and still mess up. I
Yeah.
mean, which we mess up today. But I mean,
Yeah.
you had pretty much a checklist to go down.
Yes. Which I think showed the importance of the Levites. And so when they stopped doing their job of telling people how to follow the law, God had to send prophets.
But going back to Jim's point, I think that's how it becomes transactional.
Yeah.
Or how it could seem like that, because there's so much to keep
Yeah.
that you just, and that's what we have to be careful of today, is not making our worship transactional.
Yes.
You know, and not taking the heart out of it.
Yeah. If you're not careful, it can become like filing your taxes. There's so much code to it, you got to ask someone else, what do I do? And then you just say, okay, I'll pay the least amount I can pay.
It makes me wonder though, if this was just transactional, God gave them for not even feeling guilty?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't, in my
No, I
opinion,
think they
don't think
became
so.
that way over time. I don't think it was intended to be transactional.
I know, I'm saying though, if it was,
Yeah.
that just sacrificing that with no feelings of guilt,
Yeah.
in my opinion, I'm not sure God would forgive that.
I think that's what the Sermon on the Mount was telling, was you're just saying all I need to do is this, but I'm telling you it starts with the emotion that led to this. Yes, ma'am.
Then we forget that Jesus is our Lamb, and then we just take it for granted.
That's right.
You know, oh, I don't need to worship you, or I don't need to do this, or I don't need to do that. We take it for granted, and
Yep.
they had to. I mean, it
Yep.
was hard.
It's like Paul said, Should I continue in sin that grace may abound? God forbid. I think that's very true, that we can, as Christians, get to where we think we just live under this grace-filled time period and let grace abound more, and we almost forget, no, an innocent life, the most innocent, most important life ever was given so that we could have that grace, Jesus Christ. That's all our time tonight.
Back to once saved, always saved.
Yeah. That's true. Thank you. Next week, we're going to start on the holiness of the priesthood, chapters 8 through 12.